honestly, COVID changed a lot of people's comfort level with how close they want to sit to perfect strangers. Some people like still maintain it, and a lot of them have like really like valid reasons. They're have a health condition and they don't want to pick up other people's germs. Listen, I get that. I understand that. So like, to me, it's like, be really mindful of like the fact that like there's cultural differences, there's health and wellness differences, there's societal differences. There's so many reasons why somebody is comfortable in a space and some people aren't.
Welcome to Girls Gone Gritty at Bring It On Studios, because we bring it on every week to you. I'm Darian, sitting here with Jennifer and Farley, the 3Gs. And when we sit here and we look around, this is our personal space. This is Girls Gone Gritty, Bring It On space. And today we're going to really talk about personal space, whether it's property, whether it's sitting next to someone in a small room, whether it's your house. I mean, personal space, it has a lot of different options and topics to talk about. And right now, I'm thinking, where am I most crowded? I would say at the Parker house, in the basement, wall to wall, sitting there, rocking to Pat Roddy. And I'm so happy being so crowded and everyone is in my wheelhouse. Meanwhile,
find personal space in that situation.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, my husband is upstairs at the Raw Bar with so much room, no one touching him, and he's sitting there with Farley's husband, my brother, because they don't want anyone in their wheelhouse.
Yeah,
we love.
Hey, listen, personal space is personal space, and it's defined by everybody in a different way. Like, there's people that will not go in the basement of the Parker house, like your people, because there's too many people there. And they're looking for their exit strategy before even they get there. And I'm happy that they stay upstairs because I got no problem with people being on top of me in that situation. But listen, when I'm at a bar and there's nobody at the bar and there's 900 seats and I'm sitting with a couple of girls and the person decides to take the seat right next to me, I'm kind of not really loving that idea.
Unless he's a hottie.
Unless he's hottie or famous or
but still,
I know
you
him
go
personally.
a couple of seats away.
Like, you know what? You just give people a little bit of latitude on, where you're infiltrating. You don't know the conversation I'm having, you know, even though I'm out in public. And that's the thing. Like, once you're out in public, those kind of parameters.
It also has to do with your mood. I mean,
Totally.
like for me, see here now, I have no problem that there are crowds there. I don't want to necessarily be in the masses, but I like to watch. I like to people watch, and I like to be a part of the action, whereas my husband might not want to go to See Here Now because there's going to be too many people.
Well, there are too many people. They oversell that concert.
Yeah, but you also had super duper extraordinary highest level of VIP you could have.
For the first time ever.
So,
because
I don't know.
We manifested those.
Thank you, universe, for the manifestation.
We manifested
if you were in GA, you'd be like...
No, we've
been to GA.
And you know what? We can find our own zone in GA, and it's epic too, especially when you're with a crew of people that you really love. That to me is great too.
But I love the fact that what they did this year, and I completely disagree with like the blankets of space that people put up, and they're like, "This is my space," and like you don't get that. I'm sorry, you didn't get by this.
Now, by the way, is a musical festival in Asbury Park that is on the beach. There's 2 stages on the beach. And then there's a 3rd stage that's kind of like in a park format. So if you don't know what we're talking about, it is an epic.
It's like any
and an art festival. So there's
every festival.
There's art. Charles Mansell, he has a whole booth for shaping surfboards. He's a surfboard shaper. There's art exhibits. It's just
food, drinks, music, art,
festival.
And it's
you don't get to pick you don't get to like bring your blanket from home and put it on the seat on the ground and then expect that like that's your space just because you outlined a square. Like, and it's sorry, I disagree with that. And I love the fact that See Here Now this year said, okay, you can put a blanket, but not past this point. Like,
they did?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, see, that's great.
Because it's actually ridiculous. And it creates like infighting because it's like, who are you to put a flag in this place where we all spent the same price on a ticket?
Or an umbrella.
Yeah.
Like, no.
And Bruce Springsteen was performing, for those of you that aren't familiar with this exact situation. So, I mean, the masses were out in full force and people were territorial.
And everybody's the biggest fan of him. Like, everybody's trying to one-up you on how many quizzes on like, well, what album is that from? And like, I love that about so many music festivals when not only are people like well, now you're in my space, but now you need to justify why you're in the space. And how much do you know about X, Y?
I remember last year. So the big stage at See Here Now, it's on the beach. So all these blankets, people would stake out their territory, and you're trying to walk around it, and you're running into people you just saw them. They just steamrolled all the people's blankets, and they said, "Sorry, I am getting in your space." And that's what's interesting. You have festival space, you have bar space. How about spaces of your house? Like I live in a town, and it's a mile square, and the houses are literally right on top of each other, like Manhattan Beach. And these beach towns, they're so close that if you shut a window or you make noise, like you could hear your neighbor going to the bathroom. You could hear them singing their song in their shower. Like that's close for me. So for us, we move west side, we say, to where we have a little more space, because I like to air it out a little bit. I need to make noise and have.
But the beauty of Manhattan Beach is if you are on top of each other and you're really like a block away from the beach, you're rolling out and you're right on the Strand. So it's like, once again, it's the person that doesn't mind looking in their neighbor's window because of proximity and location.
Oh, look, it's full location. I mean,
you're wired differently. Everybody's wired differently. I don't like when we go out to a bar. If I'm out with my girls, I want to spend QT with my girls. I don't want infiltration from guys with meaningless conversation. Like, check out my finger. I've got a ring on it. I'm not interested in having a conversation with you. Now, if it were to organically happen now, because we're watching a sporting event, they're leaning over us and they're buying a beer or something, and we're, watching a Yankees game or whatever it is, fine. But I really can't stand when people try to infiltrate. This past weekend at See Here Now, we were in a very special zone, but there was still a lurking infiltrator that was in my space, yelling in my ear. I could smell his breath. I was like, I
can't believe I wasn't there, because I'm usually your bodyguard.
Oh my God.
I definitely am not Farley's bodyguard, that's for sure. She's got that covered. But I think it's interesting because, like, what's interesting about that is, like, you kind of need to, if you're going to listen, fellas, if you're listening out there, you have to have a little bit of a shtick. Like, don't come up to us and be like, hey, you, how you doing? Are you enjoying the concert? Like, that doesn't really work. Like, you got to kind of like pick your spot, pick your time, pick your whatever, if you want to come through the perimeter. Like, it's just, it's the space.
Read body language
is an amazing thing. And I think it's so funny because, like, to your point, when you pick where you're going to live, like, you're picking your people, like, you're picking your tribe and your vibe. And listen, if you live in a community where you are on top of one another, then you better figure out a way to get along with your neighbors. You better figure out a way, like, to respect the fact that that this next door neighbor, I need to know that he works in the music industry and he comes home at 4:00 in the morning. So it would be really nice if I don't start working on my yard until, I don't know, 9. Like, that seems reasonable to me, right? Like, respect other people's, if you want respect for your personal space, have respect for other people's personal space, or go live on a ranch and then you've got plenty of your own space and you don't have to worry about other people. But when you live in a community, know your community.
Well, you have to respect your neighbors. Like, for us, where we live, we have a lot of space, which is great because we always have people over. We have kids, we have dogs, we have barbecues.
Your backyard is like a habitat.
It's amazing. And look, it's our 6th year of having 6 years in a row. We had toga parties. We had 200 to 300 people in our backyard, ripping DJs till 3 a.m. And our neighbor Zeke, he was an ex-state trooper. We have friends that are, policemen, but they come over maybe twice because we invite the neighbors. And there's literally only one bad person that's 2 blocks away that complains, and we just dismiss them. Other than that, our neighborhood is great, and that's what we love, because we'll have parties. You hear them having parties, kids ripping it in the pool, and no one says anything just because that's our vibe of our neighborhood.
Well, let's take this into, like, maybe a trespassing situation. Okay, let's say you're not really down with your neighbor, unfortunately, because you can't pick your neighbors. You try to, but you can't. So let's talk about, infiltration in a different way on your personal space, because that's becoming like a major hot topic, unfortunately, in our community right now.
Well, if you want to talk about
community,
if you want to talk about personal space, someone intruding, a couple nights ago, See Here Now, once again, we're talking about, I know that everyone in my family, aside from me, is at the
she's not
at
bitter
the
about
show.
that at all.
Well, and Pat, who didn't want to go. And all of a sudden I get the phone wakes me up at 1:00 and I'm like, oh my gosh. So immediately your heart drops. You never want a late night phone call. Pick it up. And I hear my sister with this groggy voice because I know she was raging, and Mom's car got stolen. I'm like, what? So immediately you kind of take a breath. You're like, oh, it's fine. I mean, whatever. It's still bad. So the story was someone coming home on their skateboard from See Here Now saw this big white SUV pull up into my mom's road, and she lives on Ocean Avenue, and a bunch of guys get out, and they just somehow, keys were not in it, they get her car started and they take off. So you feel so violated, and it's a story that keeps happening. Deal with all the paperwork, and the cops kept saying you have the one thing you have to have always on you is your Easy Pass number so that they can transponder number so they can track it. So 2 days later, they find the car. It had been completely worked, blew the tires off, blew the wheels off, the axles cracked. And thank goodness, yesterday I got a call like, we're going to just claim it as totaled. But you feel so violated knowing that someone's there in your zone. And I said, thank God, like my sister and nephew weren't walking into the house, because what happens if you have a one-on-one with them? It's just so scary to know that this can happen, and like there's no repercussion.
And nobody wants their car back after that happens, because you violated your person. Like, even if the car isn't totaled, like your mother-in-law, your mom's is, like, I've had friends that have had their car stolen, and it's like, ew, like, ew, like, ew.
Like Jenny,
like
she didn't want hers because somebody was doing drugs in it, like crazy drugs, and they were creeps, and
it's no good.
This guy was homeless.
And unfortunately, if the insurance company doesn't total your car, you're kind of stuck with it once they find it. And like, that's no fun, because when your personal space has been invaded, which is like, hey, listen, most people, the car is like the second extension of your house. You know, you don't want that back. But yeah.
How about the fact that I know 3 people in my neighborhood right now? I know 3 people, Allie, Annie, and Catherine Sullivan, that have had their cars stolen multiple times.
Wow.
They must have a nice ride.
I mean,
exactly.
Well, it's depressing. I mean, there's all different types of trespassing situations that, I had something happen recently that doesn't have to do with, a theft or a felony, but I have a dog, and he is a big chocolate lab. He's 125 pounds. He's definitely overweight, but, everybody loves him.
His name is Moose. Again, for those of you who don't know Moose, he's
a moose. Name. I have a sign that says, please don't feed the moose on the tree, because every UPS and mailman and carrier brings him little snickety snacks. So it's very hard to keep his weight under control. However, he has a collar on that, will shock him. He's got a shock collar. He knows the perimeters. He's a big wimp, and he never tries to.
He's not a big wimp. If anyone's listening that wants to come near the house, he's a mean, angry dog.
Oh, you know what? Well, this story will scare you, because he kind of can't be. So our neighbor, who I love and loves Moose very much, came over and, walked onto our property, and she had a puppy. And I think Moose was probably very jealous that she had a puppy. And I don't even know if he could see that she had this puppy in her arms. So she comes over and noticed that, like, his hair was on end. And she leaned over to kind of show him the puppy, and he latched onto her arm and broke her skin and gave a very significant bite to her. And thankfully, she, has a relationship with him, and she yelled at him, and he released, and she retreated. But she didn't want to tell me about this incident. And for 2 weeks, she didn't tell me. And her arm looked terrible. And I was horrified when she finally did call me and say, listen, I want to tell you the story. She's like, but it's on me. I came onto your property. I came onto Moose's property with another animal. And, long story short, we did have to get animal control to come out and observe Moose. And it's, like a strike against him. But they didn't consider it to be a strike because he was on his own property and he was wearing a shock collar. But still,
well, that's like any dog. I mean, my mom has a giant St. Bernard, and she's a mush. But you come on the property, or you come near my mom, anywhere in her space, and she growls, and she's like, "Arr!" And if you
she didn't roll out the door when they were stealing her car.
Well, he was going Richter, I guess, and the cops came and knocked at the door, and he wanted to jump out the window, and it woke everyone up. And then that was after the car took off and the cops showed up. So it was, a little late. My mom just thought that someone was just walking around. So it's scary. You just don't know. And that's your personal space. But personal space that I absolutely love, another personal space, which I love, is when you go on the tram and you're going skiing and you're waiting for that powder day. And I think about like Jackson Hole or Utah or wherever you are in Europe, and you're just cramming them in and you're like, oh gosh, I really want to get this. This is the first tram going up for the day. And you're sliding in with your skis and all your gear, just amping to go ski pow. And I don't mind that crowded space. So
great spaces. Yeah, there really are. I mean, I don't mind a great space that's crowded. If I'm like even a subway in New York City and I'm going somewhere fun and I'm with my people, I don't mind. Once again, it's like a people watching opportunity. As long as somebody isn't like actually trying to grab my butt or do a what is it? A drive-by?
Like a half boob, like the half boob drive-by.
The half boob drive-by to me is out of control, and that happens more than you think on a dance floor, out in a club. Like, when it's a drive-by, and I'll call the person out and I'll say, "Did you just do that? Did I really just feel you do that drive-by? You just copped a feel."
I can't feel it through the pads.
That could get you punched.
Oh, I totally have punched people for that before. 1,000%. I just think it's interesting that, like, the fact that really, if you look at how personal spaces are defined, it's by a lot of different metrics, right? Like, you go to certain places, and I mean, the Asian population, obviously, just for like densely populated place, they're more accustomed to very, very close
sitting on top of you.
Proximity. And if you look at that and you don't understand the cultural differences, there are other cultures where, like, you better not sit close to me at all because you're not allowed. Like, we maintain a certain distance. And listen, the other part is that, like, honestly, COVID changed a lot of people's comfort level with how close they want to sit to perfect strangers. Some people like still maintain it, and a lot of them have like really like valid reasons. They're have a health condition and they don't want to pick up other people's germs. Listen, I get that. I understand that. So, like, to me, it's like, be really mindful of like the fact that, like, there's cultural differences, there's health and wellness differences, there's societal differences. There's so many reasons why somebody is comfortable in a space and some people aren't. I would just say, like, you got to know the room, like, read the room. Like,
well, it's a subway.
If you're not comfortable being there, like, you can't change the situation. It's like, you can't change the where you live unless you move. Same thing as if you get into a bar, you get into a thing, and you're like, you're standing too close to me. It's like, well, listen, it's packed in here. I got nowhere else to go.
So I'm going to just have another shot and just dance and roll right into the mix.
I had somebody do that to me at a department store, and it was probably after the pandemic, but I was like not standing, what was it, like 5 feet? There was like kind of
6.
Like, they actually put like the X's on the...
They still exist in places. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. I was a little too close, and this woman turned around and she's like, excuse me. She's like, but you're in my space. And I looked at her and I was like, you know what? Get over yourself.
Pound sand.
So like, I'm not going to be that respectful. She did not look ill. She looked like she was somebody that was going to take advantage of any type of moment that she could show authority or try to, like, argue about anything.
Oh. So... Well, I think about the times when I would sit with my dad, and my dad and mom went to dinner, almost every night, but my dad never met a stranger. Anywhere he went, he had a friend, or he would make a friend. So he loved it when you went to a bar, because he would sit with my mom, and whoever sat next to him, he would know everything about them by the time he left. Everything, absolutely, that person wanted to tell him. And that's what I loved. He never met a stranger, and that was something that I always thought. And it kind of rubbed off on me. I torture my husband a lot and my mom.
Likewise.
I want to just, whoever's next to me, depending on the mood and who they are and where you are. Like, if you're at Harrigan's, you're like, yeah, whoever this is, love to talk to them. Like, I love sharing stories and listening to stories and learning about people when you're feeling it. Other times you're like, oh, Mom, this is torture. Like, you can't give the back enough to the person at the
body language cues. A lot of people just don't have that type of like radar.
They don't. But it's so funny. It's changed. And I had to look the guy's name up because it's just so funny. So Sebastian Manic, I never say his name right. It's Maniscalco. He's the doorbell guy. So he's the Italian comedian. If you haven't seen him, his shtick, I bring it up all the time on this space thing. He does a comedic clip where he talks about what it used to be like when somebody came and rang your doorbell. And it would be like somebody came and rang your doorbell and you're like, oh my gosh, who's here? Who popped over? Who stopped by? We have a special cake for guests. Come in. And he does it so funny. And then the next one is like today. It's like, who the fuck's here? Who rang my goddamn doorbell? I'm not answering that. You weren't invited over here. It's like, it's so interesting how much it's changed of like when we are inviting people into our personal space. People don't want, I mean, I'll be honest. When people ring my doorbell now, I'm like, who's coming over?
Usually Amazon, ding dong.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
but nobody stops by.
Well, back in the day, remember you
welcome wagon. People used to like welcome you to the neighborhood and drop off like a basket. I mean, what happened to that? That was a nice gesture.
What happened to when you were younger? Because you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have anything, and you were waiting for your buddy to come knock on your door, and who's gonna come over today? And okay, I'll meet you at your house, and you get that knock on your door, and you're like, "Bye, Mom. See you at 6." Yeah, and you take off, and it was kind of you didn't know who was going to come over, who was going to show up, and then you were so happy to find out like it was your buddy.
It's like a surprise. It was like a surprise. It was like a present. It's like a gift of being like in the moment, and all of a sudden somebody comes and they're like, "Woohoo! Oh my God, I have the best neighborhood. I have the best neighbors. They came and they dropped off, I don't know, some squash from their garden, or their kid popped over to see like if they could mow your yard." Like now, somebody walks onto your property and people are like, "Who? Yeah, exactly. Who you are coming onto my property unannounced, uninvited?"
What about us ding dong ditching in our neighborhood? Like we lived in the same neighborhood, and it was still so fun. Especially on mischief night, we would go ding dong ditch like our neighbors, and we ding dong ditched Amanda and Peter, very close friends of ours, and they called the cops.
Oh,
and all of a sudden we're driving down our street in our car, but like with our lights off, and we're like,
we be trouble.
Forget the ghosting, ding dong ditching and ghosting. I mean, it's so fun on mischief night, but we live in a different time now, and people are thinking that their house is going to be compromised or their car is going to be taken, and
that's so sad because
so sad.
It's the 24-hour. I'm reading right now, a little bit digression, but I'm reading that Anxious Generation book, and it's part of our unfortunate 24-hour news cycle of instilling fear and making everybody feel like everybody's a criminal. And listen, bad things happen. Cars get stolen, all these bad things.
We get texts now on our phone that say like, "Hey, the Crime Watch," or you get like a Nixle, or you get alerted of everything.
And that's part of your personal, in my opinion, that's part of your personal space being invaded. And it's honestly why I've changed a lot of my settings on my things to not give me these push notifications and alerts. When I'm going out to consume something and stepping out of my personal space, I'm choosing what those parameters look like. So I think that's part of the issue too with like personal space. It's like, I want on my terms, when I'm open to receive other people's energy, information, and there's nothing wrong with that. But once you do step out into society, then you have to understand that you're giving up some of those.
Silence your phone. Well, and take off your buzzer, or what is it? The vibration.
Notification.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you think now there's a big event. Oh, there's a party and there's 300 people or there's 500 people going to this event, and you have to dress up. And first thing you think, you're like, shit, is it going to be a super spreader event or not? Is it good enough that you care to even go get sick?
Dinner party.
I went to a super spreader event and felt like shit for 2 weeks after, but had the best time. I was like, I didn't care. But and a few people said, I don't know if I want to get COVID. Can I wear a mask? I'm like, a mask? Please don't even get me started on that.
But there were super spreaders before COVID. I mean, people had pneumonia, people had the flu, people had strep, whatever. I mean, and we probably didn't realize who we got it from unless it was the pukes. I would be like very angry if somebody had the pukes and had my kid over and didn't tell me, and then that ran through our house. That was a super spreader.
There's always been fine. There's always something. And the good thing is that space, you either want to jump in it or you jump out, you figure out a different way. If you don't want to take the subway in New York City and might be sitting next to some person who you don't feel comfortable sitting next to you, then take a cab.
Right.
You have options. You don't like where you live, it's too small, you don't like your neighbor, then move out.
Let's talk about protecting our personal space, because there's some big rules there.
It depends on where you live.
And, like we're in New Jersey and there's some big rules. And, it's scary because now that there have been several incidences in our community, a lot of people want to be able to protect themselves.
Oh, I've been protecting myself. I had this taser that I bought, and I lived in Aspen, right? So this is,
oh boy.
So it was this taser that I don't know where I got it, but it was probably about 3 inches long, it was thick, and it had two kind of spikes that when you hit the button, it would like this electrical current would go through. And if you touched someone and you held it, they would pass out. So I'm in Aspen living there, and I come out of the bar.
Can you just give us a point of reference on what year we're tasering?
So I would say I was on the Mogul tour, so it was 1987 or 8.
Was there an incident that prompted you purchasing this?
Was it a legal purchase in the state of California? Colorado?
Probably not, but however I had it, I was in Aspen living there, and I come out of a bar and it's snowing, and might have had a couple drinks, and I never would drink and drive, but maybe
drinking taser she's into though.
So I go out,
electrocuted herself.
This guy jumps into my car, and I was like, "What are you doing?" So I had a couple cocktails, so I'm like, "Shit, I can't go drive to a police officer." So I'm like, he said, "I need a ride." I said, "All right, well, I'll drive you here," and I'm like, "Get out." Not getting out. I'm like, "Okay, well." Kind of lived a little outside of town down this road. I'm like, "Get out." He's not getting out. So I see my house, and I live with my friend Pam, and the postman lived in our place too. And I'm like, "Okay, get out." He wouldn't get out. So I reached down because I kept it right on the left side of like in my car door. I pull it out and I hit the button, and I'm like, right? And I nail this guy, and he like kind of jolts, and I take off. Now, I'm a chick.
Now, did you
I'm scared
reach over and open the door and push him out?
No, I got out of the car because he had passed out. Like he was tased. Fucking freaking, I take off. I go to my house. I'm like, "There's a guy." And so they all come running out, and you just see the door open, and you see like dragged footprints, almost like a slow death if you shot like a deer and it was kind of going to its death, and it's dragging its feet, and you just saw it. And then you could see kind of, we followed it for a little bit where he must have come to a little bit because you saw the footprints kind of, he came to. So whoa. I always have a taser with me in my car.
Okay, don't mess with Darian Boyle, people. That's the message.
That is frightening. Jeez.
I generally try not to piss her off ever.
Well, I'm going to just throw out some terminology for Jersey residents. Are you aware of the castle doctrine? Okay. So the castle doctrine is if someone trespasses on your property in your home, and you can't ask them to leave. You can't say, "Hey, get out." And you also have nowhere else to go. Like you can't jump through a window, or
there can't be any walls, or there can't be any windows or doors in that area.
Well, I mean, let's say that somebody is coming after you and they actually have a weapon, and now you're back up against the wall. How are you going to break through a window with somebody like holding,
But if there's a window or a wall, it has to be in a place where there is no access.
No escape.
Well, it says the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you didn't feel threatened, nor did you feel that you or anyone else was going to be in danger.
So weirdo. So the basic premise of this is that some weird person can appear in your house. You can be like, "Who the F are you?" Like this person that was in Darian's car. You can tell them to leave. They don't leave. But if they don't put a weapon together, or you don't feel threatened, if you have a door that you can exit from, you're supposed to leave your own house.
Or a window.
This is called duty to retreat.
Correct.
It says you are cornered, physically restrained, or facing bodily injury or death. Then that can be disproved.
Right. They can disprove you. If you are, say that someone came in right now and came after the 3Gs and cornered us, and I kind of had my taser, or I had my super pellet gun, and I shot him in the eyeball or whatever I did with it, and we hurt him, we would go to jail. We would get in trouble.
And we could be sued.
And we could be sued because there's a door and a window here. So it doesn't matter.
No.
But if you shot him,
the person is between you and the door and the window.
It doesn't matter.
How are you getting there?
They don't care because I asked my friend who's a cop about this like a little while ago because there was another incident, and he was explaining. I'm like, "No way," because I'm going to go get a gun. And the one I'm
we
getting,
just heard the Byrna launcher.
That's the Byrna launcher. Is the one that I just
my husband just bought me and taught me how to use it. And I'm like, how am I putting this all together in a moment of like insanity? How am I going to that's the thing. Like, do you leave it loaded? So what this does is it shoots not only like gases, like, you know, it also can hit you with
it's not a bullet, it's not a gun for all those people.
It is the non-lethal defense weapon. It's legal in 50 states, and it either blasts, it uses CO2, it shoots 60 feet away, and it's kinetic or chemical irritant projectiles. And
it's like it's literally like a Glock. It feels like a Glock because it's the way you hold it, and it's high powered. It's and you can nail someone.
I should have brought it down here, but I'm not putting it together.
No, you're not.
In the quick of the moment, like when you have adrenaline, you know, like that's the scary thing.
So we've been robbed. When I grew up, our house was robbed a few times. The one time, why I'm still scared to this day, if you want to know my fear, is I was running. We had giant tickets. We had like 7 seats, and it was Saturday. And I'm like, all right, go down and figure out what time the game is. I drew the short straw. I ran down the back stairs of our house in Montclair. Go to run out the back door. It was like you ran down these dark stairs, and then you go to the back door, and I run into this dude. He was 6'6", whatever. Run into him. He takes a knife and lunges it at me. Now, backstory, for the last week, someone had been going in and robbing every one of the houses, stealing pocketbooks, robbing everything. So I run into him, and I'm like, oh my God, freak out, run upstairs. We had just been robbed, so they took all our guns. It was like a couple of weeks ago. My dad was in construction. We had been robbed, so they come down with tennis rackets, lacrosse sticks, anything they could see, and my brothers are trying to find this guy. Well, we had a squash court at the time. Little did I know, he went and hid in the squash court because I found him the next day when I went to go play racquetball. And it freaked me out so much.
He was still there the next day.
He took off and he came back and was in our squash court. And I was like, you know what? And I literally slept on my parents' floor looking all night with my eyes pie open, looking underneath the window with the light on in the bathroom, looking for footsteps. Like, I'm still not right. I'm still the biggest chicken.
How did you get him out of the squash court?
Well, when I ran into him, he took off. So we called the cops, whatever. We didn't have anything to protect ourselves with. The next day, I hit a racquetball because I just had this weird feeling like the guy's still here. But I thought, okay, I got to overcome it. Comes running out from underneath the steps. I've been a basket case ever since, running in the middle of the street. So you have to protect yourself. I mean, the lacrosse stick, the tennis racket, that doesn't really help. You need to have other things. But we've been robbed so many times.
The thing that's so sad and scary is that, like, the way I operate in my brain is like that story is like horrible and it's so sad. And I know so many people that have gotten robbed and stuff. I just have a really hard time operating in a space of like attack and fear. Like I'm ready to hit like the eject button on society if like I have to arm myself. I have to protect myself by video camera. Like I just during the pandemic, I read 1984 and like so many things that we're doing are like, you know, in an effort to protect us, but like by needing protection, we also give away a lot of liberty. And that's the part that I think is really sad. And I think that, you know, and we don't want to get to a society like you have in other places where, you know, you steal something and they cut off your arm. But you do need to have a little bit stricter of penalties for some of these, you know, habitual people.
But they're not going to. So you have to protect yourself. So a few things that you could use that doesn't, if you don't want to use a gun, you can get oven cleaner and it's high powered and you hit the button and it does a straight line and you put it right into their eyeballs. Literally, oven cleaner
spray does too.
Wasp spray and bear spray. So you can get oven cleaner and you can get wasp spray and keep them and make sure you aim right for the eyeballs and you're good. Not that I have a fear or I have all these things that I've been protecting myself with, but you have to protect yourself. Have it in your car because the pepper spray. My brother Bruce, he had the pepper spray and like the mace. He put it on his food one day. He's like, it's not hot. Doesn't do anything. He ate it.
What?
Yeah, because it's pepper spray.
Right.
And my brother grows hot peppers.
Right.
And eats the ends of, he eats hot peppers. So it doesn't affect him.
Wow.
So those are some tips.
Well, honestly, I like personal space that I like it being infiltrated. Let's go back to that.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's go back to the bar. Let's go back to the festivals. Let's get back to being awesome and gritty in your personal space and like have the best time with yourself. Think about that in your personal space. Enjoy life. And you know what? Yes, be smart about what you do. Be smart about what you put out there. Be smart about who you surround yourself with. And that way, somebody always has your back in the personal space like we do here at Girls Gone Gritty. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're really excited. We have some exciting new guests coming next week. So we look forward in the next coming weeks. We look forward to you guys continuing to tune in. Thank you so much. Peace out.
Peace out.
I would maybe always have breath mints with me, or maybe like breath spray.
I think we'd go out dancing and do a really crowded.
And you're like, ooh, actually, I like this infiltrator.
Let's go really dancing to a really tight space and go bouncing.
Oh boy.
Okay, here we go. All right. Bye.